I wanted to get into feature films as a director, and it's like you said, I was a 3D animator, and then I started directing TV commercials and music videos and short films, waiting to kind of get into features. And eventually my agent took all of that work and sent it to Mary Parent, who was putting Halo together, the feature film adaptation of the video game Halo. And Peter Jackson was already a producer on Halo. So they needed a director, and so they were looking for a young kind of first-time director, and they took all of the work, and Pete looked at it and then said I should fly down to New Zealand and meet him. And then I met him, and he signed off on me and said, yeah, you can have Halo, and we can, we started working on Halo. So that's how he was involved and how I met him. And then Halo collapsed, and out of the collapse of Halo, he said, I'm really sorry that this has happened, and it's a tough thing for a filmmaker to go through. And I can help you just get another film going right away, pretty much, and it can be financed outside of the studios, and it can be something else. So it was Fran Walsh, his partner, who said, because she liked Alive in Joburg, she said, why don't you take the short and turn that into a film, which I thought was the coolest idea I had ever heard. And I started at the end of 2006, or I guess the beginning of 2007, with Terry turning Alive in Joburg into a feature. And that's where the first thing was to just really define the world, like take Alive in Joburg and then seriously figure everything out. Like Alive in Joburg had multiple ships, this has one ship, figuring out the alien backstory, all of that kind of thing. And then once that world was set, we started to pick characters and points of view within there.
Well, with my character, I suppose it was a process of absorbing a lot of various people, attitudes, experiences that I'd had in my life. I guess I'm older than most actors that start trying to do features, and I've also experienced a lot in South Africa. Obviously, the tail end of the apartheid system, having to go and visit friends of mine in Soweto, as sort of black areas that where black people had to sort of live. I mean, there weren't fences around them, but it was a sort of an enforced system. I'd experienced that. I'd experienced a range of stuff. I'd experienced violence. I'd had a shootout in my building, holding a security guard's gun, waiting for guys to come running around the corner potentially while I'm sort of helping him. So I'd had some intense stuff. I'd had my girlfriend robbed at gunpoint. Emotional experiences. This is subsequent to, and the positive of the 1994 elections and moving into a peaceful, moving into democracy in a peaceful way, the inspiration of that, the mix of these feelings of national, first sort of guilt and then pride in the country and what it's achieved and all of these clashing emotions. And I try to bring, I guess, some of that subconsciously, if I look at it now, to the character. But I think those are things that allowed me to do the character.
Mm-hmm. And
well, I think for me it was, I left South Africa when I was 17 in 1997, and I've been living in Canada ever since. So Johannesburg had a massive effect on me, and because on one hand I was just a science fiction nut and I wanted to make films, I realized one day that this city that had an effect on me and that I was very interested in, and all of this different science fiction sort of world, I wanted to combine. Mm-hmm. And in the combining of them, all of these topics that are on my mind a lot of the time started to come out. Like you said, it's an analogy to apartheid, which is correct, but it's not just an analogy to apartheid. There's a lot of other things in there as well. There's also the new xenophobic stuff that's happening in South Africa with illegal Zimbabweans that are living in South Africa and impoverished South African citizens that want them out. There's a mixture of a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Just the idea of segregation in general. So it all stems from growing up in South Africa, there's no question. But it is also a science fiction film. So there's using the science fiction to create these allegories and metaphors because they're topics that interest me. And then at the same time, not wanting to make a film that's too preachy and too overly, pretentious and self-important as my first film. So it's a balancing act between the two.
I think we're at a point where we are making progress at a rate that we never did in the past. The potential for progress is kind of increasing, but I think the challenges are still there, absolutely. And I think they're becoming more. I think it's becoming clearer that they're cultural issues that are challenges, that there are values issues that are challenges more than the color of your skin now. It's more about, do you believe it's okay to have 10 wives? Do you believe gay marriage is fine? Do you believe, it's going to be all these different kinds of issues that people are debating. I think it's becoming a little bit more about that and less about physical skin color.
My take on it is a little bit different. Like, it used to be about race because that's South Africa and that's kind of where I come from. But now what it's starting to turn into for me is a case of wealth discrepancy and the haves and the have-nots. It sort of ties into what Sharlto's saying, but my version of the future looks like Johannesburg in my mind, and that Joburg now isn't necessarily white wealth and black poverty. It's white and black wealth and black poverty, and you have massive discrepancies in it, and you have a smaller and smaller elite class with more and more money and growing majority with less and less money. So my outlook isn't good, but it's not based on race. It's based on limited resources and a growing population. Yeah.